Hello, CNG 132. Welcome um, to Monday. Let's see. After the Super Bowl, today's definitely a change from yesterday. It has become snowing, um, and we're diving into some new topics for this week. But to recap on last week, let's take a look. Um, Last week, I got a few messages about um, Thumb Screw by Iron Geek. Um, Students that said I didn't see a student said they got it working. I've seen a lot of students say they could write to their hard drive or their USB still, and I directed them back to the Thumbscrew website. As we start to use the software, definitely take a minute or two to read what the software does. Um, take a step back and look. Thumbscrew has a few limitations. Number one, he can't agree 100% it's forensically sound. Buy a proven USB hardware write blocker if you want to be sure. Um, he basically just says there, hey, look, it might work, uh, but it might not work. If you want a true USB blocker, make sure you buy one. Once again, this takes us back to security. Is if you're the security administrator or a security analyst, and someone's using a free piece of software, is that the best approach to security to use? A lot of people say, "Oh, free is great. I can do this with free, or freeware or openware." And I'm always want to take a step back and be like, "Hey, that's good. We can use this open source material, but that means the attacker has access to the same open source material. Therefore, they spend all day looking for holes in it. Well, we spend all day trying to patch those holes. Guarantee they're going to find one faster than we're trying to look for one." Um, the lab 2 or project 2-4, 2-4, which was ransomware abuse tracker, um, and a few discussions popped up on that. If you can't, if it's no longer in um, if it's no longer able to access the program's URL, pop open a search engine, ransomware tracker. Uh, what's it supposed to do? Here is a. So I clicked on this one. Once again, just put ransomware tracker in there. I found this, and I was like, okay, well, what am I looking at? Summary: ransom tracker block list. Oh, it's a list. Okay. Um, it looks like it's abuse.ch is where it's come from. Popularity, rank 53, lowest rank is 53. Um, but we're looking at ransomware tracker. Here's a description of it. Offers various types of block lists that allows you to block ransomware, botnet, and CCC traffic. Okay, so I kind of had an idea of what that is. Couldn't really do any of this because that site is no longer being used. Um, couldn't filter threats, payment sites. Can we do that over here? Return to search. Oh, I guess we can. So there we have it going back to another site. We can definitely search or do some other searches. Let's see. I think in like 2015-16, FRCC had some FRCC. Somebody, it had to be somebody with administrative power, but they got an email, clicked the link, and basically it encrypted all of a drive's information. Um, FRCC's way around that was, since they had backups, they could just restore it from a Sunday backup and get around that. But they have to like on a Monday. And good thing the full backups were done on a Sunday because they just rolled back. But as we see, um, this goes back to at least 2013. But with that, it's good to have some information. NoRansom.org was up. I clicked it. That worked. But in this in this course, there's going to be sites that get gobbled up by bigger companies. Um, and sometimes they just go out of business because they're no longer um, the key stakeholder in that little area, in that little niche they had carved out. Somebody else has bought them up, and then it has changed. But make sure if you come across something, I know I'm going to find labs that say this no longer works, can't do. You couldn't do part of the lab. You could do um, more of the lab. I'll accept it this week, but ongoing, I expect you to search a solution. Um, Use the Google Hangout to actually communicate with each other and say, hey, look, I found a solution here. Use the lab discussion. Oh, thanks, Chris. Glad you took part in that. Use the lab discussion here to say, hey, look, in lab 2-4, I use this, send them the link. But I will not couldn't do this lab because something is gone. In the security world and the computer world in general, we have to find alternatives, and this is getting you in line for moving out into the industry and saying, okay, if this doesn't work, I have to find a solution. And once again, it helps you perfect the Google search process that you do. So this week I will couldn't find it, but from here on out, if it's on your lab, couldn't do it because it's, what did that say? Couldn't do it because it's no longer being serviced. I'll just mark you as 0, and you have to go back and do that lab on your own. This week, week 3, I forget what the topics are. I don't think it's crypto yet. Oh, it is cryptography. Okay, so this week we jumped into cryptography. Cryptography is basically, it's been around forever. Um, it's basically taking some sort of information and changing it around. The most basic form I can think of right now is Pig Latin. When you were a kid, somebody talking Pig Latin was totally abstract. You didn't get it. And then once you learned it, you're like, oh, I get how to decrypt your message. Um, the Romans used to use shifting alphabet to take their messages to encrypt their messages for war, just in case the enemy didn't get them. If the enemy did get them, they couldn't decipher what they were saying. There's been some really cool movies. The Enigma Machine, basically a cryptography machine. If you get a chance to watch that, definitely worth spending a few hours just kind of looking at a way that cryptography played a role. And I believe that's it. This week, definitely take your time. I believe in the project this week. We'll have to also look for a alternative solution. What I wanted to talk about today, though, a little bit different. I should say a little bit different. It has to do with security, and has to do with what would you do? And feel free to use this in your discussion for this week. I'll copy and paste this, put it in the news section of our course. But a systems engineer was arrested by the FBI for taking his laptop to China. Supposedly he went on vacation, told his company that he was taking the laptop with him. This is not the only article either. Please feel free to research this if you want to know more about this. But these are the type of things as security people, you should be aware of. His bosses quizzed him about the inconsistencies in his itinerary, and he confessed to having also traveled to China. What sort of controls could have been put in place so that this guy, well, I don't know if it's a guy. I'm assuming it's a guy. It could be a girl. I don't know. I guess it's a he. Yeah, he told his bosses he traveled to the Philippines, Singapore, when he actually traveled to China. What controls could have been put in place so that he could not, have had access to this information when he went to China? Could his laptop been geofenced? Can we say, okay, your laptop only works in the United States? I don't know what you do about Alaska or Hawaii, Puerto Rico, but could it only work within the United States? Um, when he asked about taking his laptop on vacation, it could have been just denied. No, you cannot take the laptop. You cannot take work property on a vacation because I don't see it being used there. You know, a lot of different scenarios can play out. Um, what else could we say? I don't know. I'll let you guys spin off this, read a couple articles, and kind of think about this. This type of thing happens a lot more frequently than we think. It can happen from state to state. This one was definitely a lot bigger because it had to do with the government. Um, but just kind of sit there and come up with solutions after you read it, and let me know what you think. With that, I'll stop this video here. Um, if you have any questions, make sure to reach out. Cryptography is a really cool thing that we look into this week, and then next week we look into advanced cryptography, which is even more mind-opening. The projects this week, I believe we hide images, stenography, along with cryptography, and just enjoy this week. Once again, really cool week. Take a look at that article, and I'll let you guys start out the week.